When I visited Korea at the end of the year, I had new lenses made according to the prescription from my optometrist here. The old lenses were returned to me as well, and when I saw one of them, the lens that had once fallen out of my glasses frame, I was suddenly reminded of January 1996. In South Korea, military service is mandatory, and almost every able bodied man is required to serve in the armed forces for a period of time. Like most young men of my generation, I eventually had to fulfill that obligation. I had entered college in 1995 after finishing a year of retaking the entrance exam. My freshman year was not as enjoyable as people often describe it. Rather, I remember a growing sense that time was being wasted. Looking back now, it was probably inevitable. I had no clear idea what I wanted to do or who I wanted to become, so I drifted through my days without much direction. Sometimes I wonder whether I had squandered the brilliant early years of my 20s while paying expensive tuition and fees. But at the same time, perhaps that too was a kind of privilege given to an inexperienced and awkward college student, the freedom to wander a little. In any case, I thought, maybe if I finish my military service quickly and come back, I'll be more mature and perhaps find a clearer sense of purpose. With that vague hope and with the simple desire to get it over with as soon as possible, I enlisted in January 1996. The first few days at the training camp in Nansan were difficult to adjust to. We had to line up for everything: meals, the restroom, even going to bed. We had to walk at right angles everywhere. Meals had to be eaten quickly within a fixed time, using only one hand. Every response had to end with da, na. At night, we had to wake up every hour to stand fire watch. Even washing our clothes by hand in cold water in the freezing weather was exhausting. At that time, the older students on campus who had already completed their military service suddenly seemed worthy of great respect. Then came the day of the shooting training. Before the live fire exercise, we had to go through what was called PRI training, the kind that soldiers jokingly described as bleeding, bruising, and grinding your teeth. By the time it ended, our entire bodies were soaked in sweat and dust. The winter air in Nansan cut through the body like a blade. As the sweat cooled, I began to shiver violently. In fact, 9 out of 10 trainees were already suffering from colds and body aches. That afternoon, the live fire shooting began. I shouldered the rifle, took a deep breath, exhaled about two-thirds of it, held it there, and squeezed the trigger. Bang! The recoil pushed against my shoulder. After finishing the zeroing shots, we moved on to the actual distance shooting. And then, what the? One of my lenses popped out of my glasses. My guess is that every time the rifle recoiled, the rear sight lightly tapped against the lens, gradually loosening the frame that held it in place. My right eye was already quite nearsighted. Even with my glasses properly on, shooting was not easy. But with the lens gone, I could barely see anything at all. Naturally, I failed the shooting test. Until the end of the day's schedule, I received every bit of punishment imaginable. The drill instructors kept yelling and threatening. Looking back now, I suppose a trainee failing the test wasn't good news for them either. At one point, in a scene that was almost absurd, the instructor started holding my leans in place with his hand while shouting profanities at me. It was ridiculous. How could that possibly work? Shooting was already difficult even when the lens was properly secured. With someone holding it by hand, the target looked even worse. In the end, I failed again. After one unbelievably exhausting day, I finally returned to the barracks. That evening, my condition began to deteriorate rapidly, and what followed, something I will write about later, eventually led to the rather unusual experience of being evacuated by helicopter to the Armed Forces Capitol Hospital The end.